about 10 minutes. I got to call it quits anyway.
Okay. If I can't get it up in the next like 3 or 4 minutes, then maybe we'll just end it.
Yeah.
We tried.
Yes, we did. I'm surprised Jordan didn't join us within this period of time.
All right, I think we're live again. Sorry for
Okay.
that, guys.
How much did we lose?
Probably a good like 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay. Well,
So all your stuff on Clinton.
well, the long and the short of it was we've done this before back in the 90s, but it was done out on the floor of the House. Both sides were able to call witnesses, and the Starr report, unlike the Mueller report, actually found him guilty of things.
Right.
And that's the bar. That's not, did it exonerate you? No, that's never been the bar. The bar is always, are you guilty or not? That's always been. So moving the goalposts is a political ploy and nothing more. And they haven't found,
Right.
the Democrats have been questioning the legitimacy of a Republican winning the election since the 80s. So again, nothing new here.
Well, yeah, basically, like, from what I can tell, the Republicans essentially just want this. They don't want to stop it. They want it out in the open.
Yes.
The Democrats are like, oh, they're trying to stop it because we are so close. But that's been you know, their party line for since Trump got elected is, oh, especially Shifty Schiff. It's, oh, I got all the information on this guy. It's gonna take him down. I know for a fact that he's
Yeah,
guilty.
we've heard this one before.
Well, then, fucking tell us if you're so certain. Like, tell us everything you got. Like, why are you holding it back? It's either you're holding it back because you're waiting for an opportune time to let it out, which is shitty, but that's politics, or you don't got shit and you're just a lying son of a bitch. Take your
In the
pick.
case of Schiff, I think that's the second is the more likely. And then you got to add in a little bit. I think he's crazy. There's something ain't right with that boy.
Yeah, Schiff, I don't get that guy either. I mean, I'm a Republican, so maybe the Democrats like him for some reason. Um, but yeah, I mean, I live in a very progressive state, and so I kind of see where like the progressives totally believe that if they get a majority, then they essentially get to just do whatever it is that they want.
Yes.
That if they're
Yeah.
elected,
No, I noticed that they only seem to remember federalism whenever they're out of power.
well, right, it's they don't believe in federalism or the Constitution unless it benefits them, which I don't know.
Yes.
Like I I know that I have probably a blind spot towards the Republican Party, but I don't know that the Republicans necessarily think that way. I think Trump probably thinks that way
I don't know about
a
that
little
even.
bit,
The way I
but
kind of see it is it's the Republicans keep telling us it's a republic and act accordingly. The problem is that the people they're opposing do not play by that set of rules.
well, yeah, they're playing by the idea that this is a democracy, and I like I keep going back and forth on this because I hear senators or politicians keep saying, well, our democracy, our democracy, our democracy, and I keep thinking in my head like, is it petty to be we don't live in a democracy, we live in a republic? But I think the distinction is important because there is a difference between what a republic is and what a democracy is. We aren't a pure democracy. But if you keep saying democracy, 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 people start to think that way, and then they think, well, what is a democracy? Well, everybody gets to vote, and then we do what the majority wants. That's democracy. But that's not the system that we have. Like the founders recognized that while democracy is good in allowing people to be invested in their government, to feel like they have a say, there's also dangers that go with that, where it would be like faction is essentially the worst thing that can happen to a democracy, where you get 51% voting to take away the
Rights of the
rights
49.
of the 49%
Yeah.
right. So as for the party, the Democratic Party that loves minorities, they certainly have no problem trampling over certain kinds of minorities.
Yes.
To them, minority just means somebody who is not white, essentially. That doesn't
I
mean
think that's probably a good point. Yes.
doesn't mean that they're minority opinion or minority party or minority gender. Well, maybe minority gender. I don't know. Yeah. So in another one of those Hillsdale, the Constitution 101 course, they
Yeah.
talk about how the first time that the Democratic Party essentially um, tried to reject the ideas of the founding, like the principles, and
Yep.
it was during uh, right before the Civil War, and they talk about what's his name, John C. Calhoun, and how he, in order to argue for the institution of slavery, he had to reject the ideas in the founding.
I didn't know it went that far back. I thought it was a post Civil War movement.
The progressive movement is, but this was the first time that the ideals and the values of the founding were rejected,
Uh
which resulted in the Civil War. The second time, which I'm just getting into that part of the lecture series now, is the progressive era, where they reject the ideas of the founding, essentially.
huh.
So there's, it's, I think that, I don't know, I like to think about this kind of stuff and to read and learn about
Yep.
the ideals of the founding, like the Constitution and other founding documents written by the founders at the time. It just gives you a more like human look on them as people and kind of what they were thinking about. But it also kind of tells you how it shows you the depth of their thought and how much they put into this and what they really put on the line to like ensconce these values. And it's not just the Constitution, it's also the Declaration of Independence and all that, all those other surrounding founding documents like the Northwest Ordinance. And the founders really believed that slavery would die out on its own
Mm-hmm.
if they limited the importation of slaves. Like, because that's in the word slave never appears in the Constitution. And they were very conscious of that, that
Mm-hmm.
they didn't want the founding document to be tainted essentially by the word slavery. And so I just see, I don't know if the rejection of the founding principles by the progressives is going to result in what resulted in when I guess they rejected the founding principles right before the Civil War. I don't know if it's going to come out the same way,
Right.
because they rejected the idea that um, all men are created equal and that
Yes.
they want to be free. They had to argue that some men aren't, I guess, capable of freedom, which I I can understand a bit of that argument, but I'd rather default into the, well, let's just let everybody be free. Anyway, because I do think that there's certain, I think that liberty and freedom work in America because that's what people want here. I don't think
Right.
people in other parts of the world necessarily desire that sort of thing. I think like people in Hong Kong want that, but I don't
Right.
know. I don't know if the Chinese people would necessarily be desire what we have here. Um, but they had to. They also rejected the idea that uh, the federal government, I guess, has supremacy over the state governments. They kind of just saw they they argued that the Constitution was essentially a treaty between all the various states. And
Yes.
so, since it was a treaty, this is during the Civil War, or before the Civil War, that they had a right to essentially back out whenever they wanted, as if they didn't have an obligation to remain in the treaty if
Remain in the Union.
yeah,
Well, yeah, if
if
you
one
look at almost
side
all of our
violated the treaty.
documentation, though, prior till the Civil War, it was we always referred to ourselves as these United States, not the United States. The federalism
Right.
was alive and well at the time, and unfortunately, the federalism was used to protect a really what was slavery has been with us since the beginning of time. You know what I'm saying? So
Right,
it
yeah.
was an evil that was always there, and in a way, the world was moving on, and slavery was dying out in the West. And here you had these people who would jealously guard their own rights, to death, willing to abrogate the rights of another. It kind of shows you the insanity of the human condition in some ways,
Well,
and
yeah,
the evil of the human condition.
the idea of slavery essentially cuts against the ideals of the founding. Like if you read all the people who were trying to abolish slavery, they essentially made appeals to the Declaration of Independence and the other founding documents
Yep.
to bring the country in alignment. They saw something that didn't align with those values, slavery,
Hmm.
enslaving
Yes.
another human being. But I also understand too that the founders, if they felt like they could have gotten rid of slavery, they would have, or at least most of them.
What it was is the southern provinces, the southern states at the time, were not ready to give it up, and the British
Right.
actually, in a lot of ways, with a lot of their policies during the Revolutionary War, really helped foment strife between the different groups.
Well, yeah,
And
they were worried that if they had that they would free all these people and then they would be angry and then rise up and murder the people that had once enslaved them, which
yes,
they felt wouldn't be totally unjustified since they kept them in bondage. But they were weighing, and I see this now, like, I like this kind of idea that they were weighing two different natural rights against each other. It's the right to liberty and the right to life. Like, the slaveholders, the people who owned slaves had a right to life because everybody does as a human being. But the slaves also have a right to liberty,
mm,
but they felt that if they gave them the right to liberty, that take they would use that liberty to take the right to life away from the people who own them.
I think that really that argument just at first blush sounds really weak. Listen, I'm really glad we had a chance to do this for an hour, but I do need to get going.
All right, man.
So, hey, let's find out if Jordan's all right, and I'll be in touch. All right.
All right. All right. Have a good
Talk
day,
to you later,
man.
bro. Thanks.
All right, guys. I'm gonna cover this other story, and then if Jordan isn't here soon, then I am probably just going to end it there. Um, hopefully he'll get on later and kind of show me how to fix my settings and everything, so I don't have this stupid buffering stuff for you guys. But let me pull up this other story about this kid in Texas. Just give me 1 second here. Maybe I should look into new streaming software. Who knows? Something easier. This one was free, so. So I saw a lot of this going around on Facebook, and so I thought, well, let's talk about it because it does bring up some interesting points. There's this Dallas child custody battle hinges on 7-year-old's gender identity. Draws attention of Abbott and Cruz. So this is in Texas, where these parents, they're going through a divorce, which is sad itself because no one wants that to see that happen to a family and their kids and everything. And so during the custody battle, they originally, I think they got joint custody of the children. They have 2 children, and one of them is a 7-year-old boy who, I don't know if he says it. It's kind of weird. Like I heard different things, but it's the internet, so who knows what's fake news and what isn't. But according to this article, the 7-year-old boy believes that they're a girl, which, and that this story I do believe has some bias to it because in here they say the mother, pediatrician Anne Gogulas, Arugula. I don't know. You can see it there. Anyway, they list her occupation, pediatrician, which is a respectable occupation, you know, a doctor. Like she knows what she's talking about. She's a doctor. And then the father is just Jeffrey Younger. He's just Jeffrey Younger. He's not like Professor Jeffrey Younger or mechanic Jeffrey Younger. It's just Jeffrey Younger. And so it's why do they list her occupation as opposed to the father? Go away, stupid pop-up. All right, sorry guys. So the mother, essentially, I heard stories that she was kind of withholding affection unless the boy said that it was a girl and kind of washing it. But this article doesn't say anything about any of that. I think that's something the father has kind of been telling people about. So I don't know how. I would want to corroborate that before I just tell you that's what's really going on. But there's 2 points that I want to make with this. One is that the transgender, I don't think a 7-year-old can reasonably make the distinction of their gender. Like we don't let 7-year-olds drive cars, we don't let them vote, we don't let them sign contracts. They can't make these decisions because their brains aren't fully developed, they haven't reached the age of maturity, 40, so they're just not equipped to make these sort of decisions. Taking hormones and essentially chemically castrating yourself and changing your gender is not something I think a 7-year-old would get to decide.